Hello, Frizzle fiends! So my reading so far hasn't been going the best. I've had a paucity of 5 stars. And this is about half the rate of finding new 5 stars than I was at last year. So I need a game plan. I need a way to find new 5-star books. So I have turned to this project of reading books that my nemesis hates. Because I was really approaching this strategically. I was looking at the 10 5 stars I found. I'm like, what do these have in common? How can I replicate this? And I realized that like 2 of them were from doing this project before. So let's do it again. So why do I have a nemesis and what's going on here? Let me explain. My nemesis is Matt's fantasy book reviews, and he is my nemesis because we have opposite taste in books. The ones that he hates, I tend to love. The ones that I hate, he tends to love. And I've been trying to think of a way to demonstrate this to you in a graph, because I love graphs, but like, how do you capture reading taste in a graph? But I've done it. You ready? So here's the graph we're going to be working with. I'm going to be putting on this graph all of the books that me and Matt have both read, which right now, according to our Goodreads, is 111. We read a lot of the same books in the same genres of sci-fi and fantasy. So on the x-axis here is going to be what I rated the book. Here on the left being my 1-star reads, and on the right being my 5-star reads. The y-axis here is going to be what Matt rated the book, with down at the bottom being his 1 stars and up at the top being his 5 stars. So theoretically, if we had exact matching taste, the graph would look like this, where everything aligns in this blue diagonal center line where we rated every single book the same. The farther away we get from this blue diagonal center line, the more our taste diverges. So are you ready to see the actual graph with all the books we've read? Here it is. As you can see, we don't exactly stick to that center line. The red dots are all of the books that Matt liked more, and the yellow dots are all of the books that I liked more. So here's some things that are particularly interesting about this graph. We can agree that a book is good. There's lots of things in this top right corner, books that we both gave 5 stars, 4 stars, where a book does fit both of our taste. Like right now, Matt is reading the 𝐂𝐇𝐀𝐏𝐿 saga, one of my all-time favorite series, and loving it, and I'm so excited to see him continue loving it, hopefully. So we can definitely agree on what the good books are. Where we definitely disagree on what the bad books are, because you see this lower left quadrant where books would be if we agreed that they were bad. It's pretty empty, because if he hates the book, I love it. If I hate the book, he loves it. So if I'm looking for guaranteed books that I'm going to love, I need to look at his 1 and 2 stars, because according to this graph, if he rates something 1 or 2 stars, my chances of loving it are very high, and I'm very likely to give it a 3, 4, or a 5. Last time I did this experiment, I read 3 books, and they were a 4, a 5, and a 5. So let's try this again. So in this video, I'm going to be reading 3 books that Matt hates, which are A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, The Priest of Bones, and 3 Parts Dead. These are all books that he's given 1 or 2 stars, and we're hoping these are going to be my new 5 stars. Let's go. A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking is a cute middle grade adventure fantasy where we are following a girl who has bread magic. She can make bread rise, she can make her gingerbread dance around, she has power over bread. And this makes her just a minor wizard, like she isn't that useful to the kingdom, but she runs a good bakery. And then one day she stumbles across a dead body in the bakery, which catapults her into this larger plot of prejudice and violence against people who have magic, which unfortunately includes her. I've previously read 2 books by this author. They were both in her kind of cozy romantasy series, and I gave both of them 3 stars. And the reason those ones didn't quite click with me, I think boils down to a lot of the humor in those books surrounded our characters just being horny for each other, and that humor style just didn't click with me. But I did appreciate the craft and overall plotting of the books. So I thought, let's try a middle grade without any romance, and this one might work a lot better. So I'm currently 50% into this book, and I'm not loving it, which is so sad. The whole experiment was to give me 5 stars, and this one is not feeling 5-star at this point. Let me tell you why. So following a kid who is a baker, excellent. I love it. I am a baker. I love baking bread. I don't like have a bakery or anything, but I do make bread. When our character is talking about caring for her sourdough starter, like I have been there. I know exactly how that feels. It's very fun in that way. Though this book, at least so far, doesn't include all that many scenes of baking, we're definitely more focused on the plot against all of these magic people in the city. And I've been trying to put into words, what about this book isn't clicking for me? Because I love our protagonist, I love the setting, I love the premise, I love the side characters, we have a nice plot going, like what is it about this? And I think it boils down to our protagonist is too self-aware. And usually I love a self-aware protagonist. I love a protagonist that is aware of their own flaws and is kind of actively working through them. I think it can add a really nice flavor to a story. But in this story, she is so aware of her flaws that she no longer has any. And that makes it really hard to love and follow this story. So for example, you could argue that one of her flaws is that she gets angry a little too easily. She finds herself arguing with the police chief and all of these people in positions of authority that she really shouldn't be arguing with. She doesn't want to get in trouble, etc. But the entire time she's being angry with them, the narration is like, oh, and I really shouldn't be angry with them, but this little thing slipped out, and like, I'm so sorry, and like, that's really not me, and like, she's so self-aware that she shouldn't be angry in this moment that I can't just enjoy the flaw of her being ridiculously angry in this moment. Like, it can often be entertaining to follow fiery, angry characters, especially if you get a nice character arc of them coming into a little bit more maturity by the end of the book, but she is so mature that there's nowhere for her to go. Same goes for another one of her flaws, which is she's not that good at her magic. Compared to other wizards that have spent decades practicing, she doesn't have that much of a fine handle on what she can do. But she is so aware of this fact. She's constantly reminding us like, oh, I'm just a little wizard, I can't do anything. It's because I have not practiced enough. It's because I have not experimented enough. It's because I have not put enough time into the skill. And then she puts time into the skill and gets better. And there's like no tension to it because she's so aware of this shortcoming and exactly how to overcome it. Like, it's not that she doesn't believe in herself, it's that she has a very fine knowledge of her exact skill level and how to improve it. And it just makes it hard to root for our protagonist when it feels like she's already reached her final form and all she needs is a few little tweaks. Now, the story is not all bad. It is cute, it is entertaining, and it's an easy read. I'm halfway through it and I am planning to read the second half, and maybe the second half will be much better and I'll be coming back to you with a 5-star review in a second. But right now I'm feeling 3 stars about this book, which is still a win. I'm still overall enjoying it. It's just I had my hopes up so high for this experiment and it's not starting off on the right foot. But we do have 2 more books to see where it goes. So as A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking continued, I continued with about the same feelings. Let me break some of them down for you, and then I'm going to be reacting to Matt's review. So the main conflict of this book is that there's some people who are against magic users. And then that conflict continues to escalate until there's like an invading army coming on the city, and it's up to Mona to defend. And there were some really cool and poignant moments in the final battle, and I did like most of this book, but I did have some problems with it. The ending of this book lands on a note that's like, yay, we did it! We saved the day, but also, wouldn't it have been great if instead of this little teen girl having to save the day, we had the adults who should have been in charge with their bureaucracy save the day? And like in most middle grade fantasy novels, you have a young person, a child, saving the day. And it's just like par for the course to suspend your disbelief that it is a child here on the front lines, the best one to tackle this problem. So I was down to suspend my disbelief. But then this book didn't want me to. This book wanted me to question of, shouldn't it be the city guard that's protecting the city? Shouldn't it be blah, 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 blah? And it like just made it so difficult for me to enjoy this book because I felt like I couldn't suspend my disbelief and I didn't quite connect to this theme that it was trying to push of the failed system creating this tragic role for our protagonist. But it was just hard for me to enjoy the book when the book kept poking logical holes in what was happening. The book asks the question, why is this happening, but never provides a good answer. This definitely feels like a simple book that children will enjoy more than adults, and I don't think I have enough childhood in my heart left to super love it. I was also disappointed in the end at the lack of baking in this book. Like, I love baking. Here's some of the things that I love about baking. I love putting together a recipe and trying it as you go, being able to put your own little spins on things. I love the patient process of like having dough rise that you've got to like wait for a few hours for this step and that step, and it's such a slow waiting kind of craft that I feel like it makes the end when you get to try the thing that you've made and enjoy it so much more satisfying. This book had very little actual putting together recipes, baking things, trying things. The actual baking that ended up happening in this book felt very mass-produced in a lot of different ways. When we were in the beginning in the bakery with our protagonist, she was making things, mass-producing, no time to think about the recipe or anything. There was like no joy in the baking for her. And in the end, when they're like trying to defend the city with her baking, big go time, mass producing, and there was no the coziness of baking that I was hoping I would get in this book. So I'm going to give A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking 3 stars. I liked it. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, which puts me in the sad position of only being 1 star above Matt's rating of it. And obviously I knew that this was a possibility that it could happen. On the graph of our taste that I showed you earlier, we have plenty of books that he gave 2 stars that I gave 3 stars, but I was hoping for more. So now it's time for me to react to Matt's review, and I wonder if I'll agree with a bunch of things, because we did rate this book somewhat similarly.
But I gave it 2. It's the worst book I read this month, and then the worst surprise. But it's just a cutesy little book. That's not Matt.
So like, I didn't get the cozy vibes from this book. We're not quite on the same wavelength there. I wish we had had more. I would have liked that. But no.
People told me this is funny. There's something funny here. Maybe a couple little lines every now, in the entire story got a small chuckle out of me, but not enough.
I do agree that this book isn't really funny. It did not jive with my sense of humor either.
And the ending I felt was horrendous. I mean, I feel like the author kind of ruined the ending and tried to make it bigger than it was, and tried to make this character a hero, and it was really eye-rolling. And yeah, could not find very much enjoyment out of this book. I did finish it.
Yeah, I agree that the ending just didn't land thematically. So, on to reading another book that Matt hates. Let's go. And the next book is The Priest of Bones. So I'm halfway through this book, and let me tell you what it's about. This book takes place in a somewhat medieval-y fantasy world, where there was just a big war. Lots of people went off to fight in that war, were drafted into it, and now all the soldiers are coming home, traumatized and sad. We are following one man, and before the war, he was like a mob boss. And then while he was away at war, his criminal empire somewhat crumbled and splintered into a bunch of little gangsters running the businesses. And now he's coming back, and he's trying to reclaim what was once his. He's trying to retake his city, and he's got a bunch of his army buddies that he's recruited to come be his new mob. There are 2 things that have surprised me about this book. One that I'm kind of lukewarm on, and one thing that I really like. So let me tell you about the lukewarm thing first. This is a slow-paced book. And you'd think with the premise being like exciter gangstery that it would be like an exciting book, but it really is a lot of people just like talking. A lot of people reminiscing, a lot of little negotiations within the mob. And I am enjoying my time with this book. I'm enjoying the characters, I like those little quests that they're going on, and I'm excited to see more things to happen, but also I'm a little bit like, and why hasn't a thing happened yet? Just from the beginning of the book until now, the status quo has been mostly unchanged, and I'm ready for something to shake it up. Like, one of the members of their gang started having these creepy magical powers, and I'm like, ooh, this is an interesting plot, and then it was kind of just like quickly swept under the rug, and now that character is gone, and I'm like, can we please change up the status quo, please? So I am loving my time with this book. I do think I would give it like 4 stars, but if nothing happens in the second half of this book, that will get bumped down. If something awesome happens in the second half of this book, it could get bumped up. I am feeling mostly happy about this book, and one of the reasons that I'm so happy about this book is because of the women. So going into a book like this, which is written by a man, starring a man, main character, has this kind of masculine-centric plot of gangsters and wars vibes, I'm always a little apprehensive going into those kind of books, like, how sexist am I getting into here? Because sometimes the answer is 0, and sometimes the answer is quite a lot, and I do not like the books that are quite a lot of sexism. And this book has managed 0 sexism, which is not even what I was expecting. Like, it has surpassed the expectations, which admittedly were pretty low, and I am in awe. This book, which is about gangsters, which are admittedly in the book mostly men, and about soldiers coming back from the army, which are admittedly mostly men, somehow the main characters and side characters of this cast are like half women. It's beautiful. The author has just done what should be our bare minimum, but in fantasy books is often going above and beyond, which is just finding ways to make half of the cast women. We've got a woman soldier, we've got a woman spy, we've got the main character's aunt, who is a prominent character in the books, and just like lots of little female characters scattered throughout the cast that play important roles and feel like 3D characters, and I'm just like, yes, here, this is what we should be doing. And it just brings me so much joy every time a new character is introduced and it's a woman. I'm like, ooh, another one? Yes, please. And it's not like this book is making speeches about feminism, but if you made a list of the top 10 characters in this book, half of them would be women, and that just brings so much joy to my soul. Fantasy books about gangs, it's usually like every character is a default male and you might throw in like one female character into the cast. Looking at you, Mistborn. I think all of our side characters are compelling. Guys are also good. I just was blown away by the existence of women. Because it's just, my bar is in the trash because of how many times I've been burned by all of these fantasy books. So let's see how I feel about this book when I finished it. Did I ever tell you why this book is called The Priest of Bones? Our main character started out crime lord, then he went off to war, now he's back trying to reclaim being a crime lord. While he was off at war, he became a priest chaplain for his military company. The goddess that he's pledged to as a priest and acts on behalf of for his people is pretty much the goddess of death. Most of their prayers are just like, please let me not die today. And for a book about a priest with the word priest in the title, it's kind of disappointing how little religious exploration there is in this book. Like, there was a scene where he was taking confession from his people, and that's been mentioned a few times. He'll occasionally say a little prayer like, oh, please, can we not die today? Or when someone dies, it's like, the lady took him. It was his time. But you really get the sense reading this book that despite our main character being a priest, the religion isn't important to him on a personal level. And I think this book could have really taken that idea and run with it when he is giving sermons to his gang. He's always giving them with the intent to better manipulate them, not like trying to preach what he sees as the religious truth. And if the book had gone in and like explored that hypocrisy in his role better, I think it could have been really interesting, but the book never really touched it, never really wanted to explore that or talk about it at all. And I think in the end, him being a priest was just boring and pretty irrelevant to everything that happened in the plot. So kind of disappointing, because I do love books that deal with themes of religious structures and beliefs. I think it's a really interesting topic to explore, and I love it when it's explored thoroughly and well. And in this book, it was not. So at this point, I have finished the book. So what did I think about it? I was trying to think, like, how do I explain the plot that happened in the second half of the book? And it's just, remember what I said about the first half of the book? It's the same. He is trying to reclaim his old businesses, he's going on raids, he's doing little power plays with his people, and that's it. This was the big disappointment of the book. Like, the stakes were never raised, the status quo was never changed, there was never anything going on, really. Continued through to the very end of the book, where finally, at the very end, the stakes were changed and the status quo was changed. But other than that, it's just a book of samesies, 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 samesies. And that was just so disappointing. I did like it, I was entertained all the way through, but like, the truth is that the pacing in this book is entirely whack. And I can really love slow-paced books when there's a really good character study with them, but this book also didn't have that. So, yeah. I think I'm landing on 3 stars, which pains me, because Matt gave this book 2 stars. That's barely any better. Like, I liked it, but we are here hunting for books that I love. And now it is time for me to react to Matt's review of it, and I'm really excited to see what he thinks about it. But I'm kind of excited because I think we're going to agree on a lot of things. So, let's see.
Got pretty close to DNFing this book as I went along, and it's just very frustrating because I feel like I am predisposed to like this kind of book. The building of a mafia empire or the rebuilding of one. And I like that kind of story.
I think it's really funny that he feels that he was predisposed to like this book, and I, going in, kind of felt like I was predisposed to not like this book, but then we ended up in about the same place.
And it's frustrating. And when I went on Goodreads, and when I was looking up this book a little bit, because basically the entire first page is 5 out of 5 stars, which is better than normal, better than what you would normally see from that kind of thing. People I know and kind of trust were all giving it 5 stars. But man, like, what did I just read that you all read, or the ones that read this and loved it? Because honestly, I was bored for a lot of this book.
And of course, we exactly agree. And I had the exact same reaction when I looked at the Goodreads page after finishing this book and saw all the people saying like how exciting this book was and all the 5 stars. And I was like, I do not understand how this book has this many high praise reviews.
And it would be far more interesting for me to read a book from them in their heyday, when we don't have to have this slow takeover that felt really samey as they take over businesses one at a time. Instead, the storyline can focus on the bigger picture and the politics between the gangs. But here it's severely lacking in that front.
Ooh, I agree with this point completely here, that it felt so samey, taking over business after business. And it reminds me of something that I thought as I was reading this book, is if the book had given us a better framework of exactly how many businesses they were taking over and exactly what advantage they gained from every business, and not just a vague, oh, we have another business, but we have this specific business and that enables us to do this, which enables us to do this, and we are 4 out of 5 businesses completed. I think even just adding more of that kind of framework of helping you really understand exactly where they were in taking over the businesses progression could have made the book so much more entertaining. But every single time they took over a business, nothing else would change about the plot, and I would really lose track of wait, didn't they already take over that one? How many left do they have? No idea.
So I had probably 100 pages or so, maybe a little bit more. Maybe a quarter of this book where I was like, this is good stuff. And then it just went downhill. So yeah, can't give it a 1 star, but it's closer to that than 3.
And again, I wish that I could disagree with Matt on any of these points, but I agree with him on pretty much all of them. And I'm giving it 3 stars, which is higher than the rating he gave it. Because I did like a lot of elements of this book and I did enjoy my time with it, and I never considered really DNFing it because it was good enough. So 3 stars, fine. And now I'm questioning the whole point or validity of this video. Last time I did this video, I got a 4-star, 5-star, 5-star. It was success across the board, right? It was so much fun. And then this time we've gotten a 3-star and a 3-star. And I want to read another book, but I am losing passion for this project. Well, not losing passion for this project, because I do enjoy reading and reviewing books and it's fun to have a nemesis, etc., but I'm losing hope that the next book will be my 5-star. So I thought we need to push it farther. These last 2 books that I've read from Matt, he both gave 2 stars. In my previous video, I did all 1 stars, and then they got really good results. So I think we need to push it farther, and instead of picking one of his 2 stars next, I pick one of his 1 stars. Right? And then hopefully it'll mean my rating is at least a 4. That'd be really nice. I'd love to find a book that I can love. So the book that I have selected is 3 Parts Dead. This is a book that is in my favorite genre, urban fantasy. I am pumped to start this. And in fact, I've already started it, and well, I hated the first few pages, but I didn't really hate the first few pages because the first few pages were bad. I hated them because I was listening to the audiobook and it was one of the worst narrators I'd ever heard. For context, I listen to literally over 100 audiobooks every year, and it's only I don't know, 1 in 400 audiobooks where I get a narrator that's so bad I can't listen to that audiobook and enjoy it. Most of the time, an audiobook narrator for me is fine. I can listen to a wide range of voices and it's all good, but listening to the first 10 minutes of this audiobook, no. So I've given up on listening to the audiobook for 3 Parts Dead, and I'm going to the library soon to check out the book so I can read it with my eyes instead. So I am continuing, but I'm also a little apprehensive of is the reason that Matt gave this book 1 star because of the terrible audiobook performance? Because I agree with him in that case. But hopefully the actual content of the book is something that I can love. We'll see. So I've now started for the 2nd time 3 Parts Dead, and I finally got in far enough into it to tell you a little bit about the book. So it's definitely so much better not doing the audiobook. I think definitely my problem with the writing style was entirely with the audiobook. The writing style, just reading the book with my eyeballs, totally fine, no objections to it. So the main plot of this book is we are following a young woman. She's recently been kicked out of magic school and she's kind of going back home, and then she gets this job interning with this hotshot wizard lady, and they are tasked with kind of trying to resurrect a recently deceased god. And there's all these politics things in the city because the god has recently died, and there's also murders happening to the city officials that they're trying to investigate, and it's very interesting in that way. However, I kind of hate it. I did not want to come on here and say that I hated a book that my nemesis hated. The entire point of having a nemesis is trying to find books that I'm going to reliably like because he reliably hates them, right? But it turns out that our nemesis ship is much more complex than that. And it turns out that it's not so reliable as if I read the books that he hates, I will immediately love them, as taste is complicated, which is quite a disappointing thing to realize. So why am I hating this book? I think a lot of it is because the book feels very style over substance. Shocking plot moments over character development, which is never the hierarchy that I like. I like my characters to be interesting and complex and have motivations and internal conflict and all these cool things, and then after that, I'm good with an awesome plot, right? Like, for example, our main character, I couldn't tell you any of her character traits except she's willing to stab people and raise zombies if it accomplishes her goals. What are her goals right now? Yeah, I couldn't tell you actually. Her behavior from scene to scene honestly bamboozles me. And it just makes it so hard to root for her or follow the book or get invested in anything. I've just been like churning my wheels on this book for like 2 weeks and I've made it 19% in because every time I pick it up, it just feels like such a chore and I hate it so much. So I'm giving up. And I think this book is going to get 2 stars from me because it does have some redeeming qualities. The magic system is interesting. It's very much like necromancy focused, where they're making zombies out of people, where they're making the spirits of dead people talk, where they're controlling their bodies in grotesque ways. There's like gargoyle shapeshifters. And if light body horror necromancy magic system was on like your wish list for a book, like sure, I'd recommend it. But if characterization is on your wish list, then I wouldn't. So now it's time for my favorite part of these videos, which is I get to react to what Matt said about this book. And I think we're gonna have very similar reviews.
And I ended up giving it a 1 did not finish score.
So I am giving all of the books in this video exactly 1 star higher than Matt is giving them. So I guess in that way, it's a little bit of a success, kind of a little bit, yeah.
It was the story that hurt it. The characters were okay, the writing style was okay, but the story was weak to me. It didn't grab me at all.
Oh, that's interesting that for him it's the plot that broke it, and for me it's the characters that broke it. So we have different bones to pick with this book.
But I thought that there's these huge info dumps that happened, which was very off-putting. You know, that's something that belongs back in a style that is decades and decades old. I like the slow trickle. I like to discover the world on my own. And just getting, bombarded with info was not like a fun way to get me invested in this world.
I also have problems with the way that information, especially about the world building, was given to us, but it felt less like there was big info dumps and more like the information that we were given, though it was kind of a slow trickle, like you get this little piece and that little piece and that little piece. The pieces that we were given never felt very relevant to the part of the story we were in. They always came out of nowhere, and it was hard to hold on to all these little pieces of information because they never connected to what I currently was wanting to know about. So in that way, I also had a problem with the exposition of this book, but differently than Matt had the problem. So for this video, where I was desperately searching for 5-star books, I got a 3-star, a 3-star, then a 2-star. So didn't quite work out the way I was hoping. Me and Matt fantasy book reviews rivalry might not be all that I was hoping for it to be. We agree too often. But even combining this video, which was a bit of a flop, and last time I did this video experiment, which was such a raging success, got a 5-star, 5-star, 4-star in that video, my average rating for both of these projects combined is a 3.7, which is actually like higher than my typical reading and higher than my normal project, like even with these 3 stars and 2 stars bringing it down. Overall, the 6 books I've read that Matt's fantasy book reviews has hated have been hitting better than when I just pick up books normally, so I do think I'm going to continue to do these projects and hope that this one was just a fluke and I can find books I love out of the books that he hates in the future. Because having a book nemesis is very fun and I do enjoy it a lot.